Hello everyone, welcome to a World of Warship Blitz video. Today's video is the first in a series I will call Fee versus Free, where I look at ships from the same class where there is a tech tree version which is available via grinding, i.e. free, versus a premium version which is available for purchase or gold or whatever, sometimes available through crates, but most often it is a fee. So today's video is going to be looking at the Tirpitz and the Bismarck, which are probably the most exemplary view of the fee versus free, where there is a free version that's a very famous ship, and there's a fee version that's also a very famous ship, though with a somewhat anyway, both of them had short careers. Anyway, so let's go. And this is going to be a statistical based view, so I'm going to be looking at statistics as much as possible. Now, fair warning, when we look at win rates and things like that, the statistical sample set is extremely small because the statistical sample set consists of my performance. Now, I have been saving or noting down my stats at regular intervals. So what that means is that I can actually assess my performance over the last 12 months for many of my ships. Some of them I haven't had 12 months and some of them I haven't played in 12 months. That makes it a little bit tricky. But for the Bismarck and the Tirpitz, the stats that I'll be using and comparing these ships with is my last 12 months worth of stats. Right, so let's start and look at the difference between these ships. So the setup of the ships is very similar in a lot of ways. In my at one time, my summary of the Tirpitz was that it was the Bismarck with torpedoes. That's not too far wrong, but when we get into the nuance, it is a little bit different when we get to my particular ships. So the setup of my ships with the Bismarck is that I've gone for range, so it has main battery modification 3 in the main battery slot. It has the deck protection modification 1 to reduce the fire chance because both ships spend an awful lot of time on fire. And in the third slot, it has the steering gear modification 2, which is the more effective of the steering gear modifications to try and reduce the, or try and improve the rather unagile nature of the ship. I have the supply slots and the consumable slots all filled with refined diesel, with crew rations, and with preventative maintenance, or whatever it is called, preventative maintenance. So both of them are the same. I just use normal consumables. I don't use premiums. I have a few of them saved up, but I save them for things like Blitz Royale. So basically they are essentially the same ship. Both of them have historical camo. For the Bismarck, that historical camo provides improvement on hit points, main battery firing range, improves dispersion again, and provides some torpedo damage reduction benefits, although we'll see how that looks. For the elite skill, the Bismarck has the secondary battery reload time and the secondary battery auto reload time of 10% improvement on each, and we'll see that as I go through the comparison of the stats. For the Tirpitz, the main difference is that it has the secondary battery modification 2 in the first slot rather than the main battery modification 3. So basically that provides an extra 10% range and dispersion improvement for the secondaries, and I'll explain the reason for that shortly. The other difference is that for the elite skill, it has the damage reduction, the improved domain armor bout, which provides damage reduction of 5% and Citadel Protection improvement of 10%. Now, the other difference between the Tirpitz and the Bismarck is the Bismarck is a tech tree ship, does not have access to the Admiral Hipper. It has a commander which has managed to get himself over the course of the year up to level 10, which means he gets the compartment maintenance. But during the course of the year, I think most of them, he would have been at least level 9, close quarters combat expert with a 15% dispersion improvement on the secondary batteries. The Tirpitz commander is Franz von Hipper, who normally sits in the Hipper for whatever reason. He has not advanced as far, so the Tirpitz that I'm running, the main benefit I get from him is improvement on the Marksman, so the Marksman Plus, which means plus 33% main skill, a precise aiming system skill duration, which is good for getting a second shot off. And the other thing, I mean, he has other improvements as well, but the other thing I rely on is the Sixth Sense, which tells me how many ships are targeting the Tirpitz. So, looking at some stats, what that means is that my Tirpitz and my Bismarck have almost the same number of hit points. The Bismarck actually has 65 more hit points than the Tirpitz at 53,561 versus 53,506, so they're essentially the same. that 65 hit points is I think, less than the smallest caliber gun that you'll be hit with. Right. For Citadel Protection, if you were listening around the capabilities that my Tirpitz had with its elite skill, it has a 19.25% Citadel Protection versus 17.5 for the Bismarck, and with a damage reduction of a 15.75% versus 15 for the Bismarck. That's the elite skill. The torpedo damage reduction of the Bismarck is better, and that's entirely due to the historical camo at 15.9% for the Bismarck versus 15% for the Tirpitz. The ships are essentially the same across many of their stats. They have the same speed, they have the same rate of turn. The time to full speed on the Bismarck is slightly improved. It's 0.81 of a second better than on the Tirpitz at 31.88. But that's about a 2.5% difference over half a minute. So yeah, you won't notice it. Similarly with the turn time, the Bismarck is the more agile ship at 13.3 seconds versus 13.57 seconds. That means it's 2% faster across nearly 15 seconds to get its rudder across. Again, something you're not really going to notice. So essentially they are the same ship. The only differences to this point are due to the only significant differences due to elite skill bonus and historical camo choices, which is also going to be the case for the secondaries. So what we're going to talk about here is the secondaries are different, and basically what's happened is that the Bismarck, because of that secondary elite skill, has faster reload, but because I haven't optimized it, it has the stock range. So basically the Bismarck secondaries fire every 7.38 seconds, assuming I'm fast enough on the fire, and go out to 6.9 kilometer range. So the Tirpitz, on the other hand, is about over 10% slower, about 10% slower, at 8.2 seconds to reload, which is a little bit longer, but with an 8 kilometer range on the secondaries. Now these are the main secondaries, which are the 6-inch armoured piercing. Just be aware that at 8 kilometres you'll get an awful lot of zero scores. You'll get an awful lot of bounces, especially against battleships. They may be more useful against destroyers, but even then these secondaries really taper off at that range. So yeah, would it be a choice I'd make again? I'm not sure. The auto secondary, similar story, 5.4 seconds. Every 5.4 seconds they shoot on the Bismarck, every 6 seconds on the Tirpitz. However, the range on the Tirpitz is 5.31 versus 4.83, so it's almost half a kilometre further on range. The AA for the Tirpitz is slightly reduced, and we assume that that's some AA. It's a small AA only. I think it's about 109 versus 165 or something. So essentially these are the same ships. If I strip them back, they would probably start to line up and look very, very, very similar, apart from the torpedoes on the Tirpitz. So stock, yes, the Bismarck is the Tirpitz is the Bismarck torpedoes, but it's more complicated than that once you start to load it up. So any other advantages that the Tirpitz has? The Tirpitz can take commanders from different ships, so it can take I can put the Bismarck commander in it if I want secondary improvement. It can have Admiral Franz von Hipper, which I generally put in him because I'm trying to train him up to get him to the point where I get those improved secondaries, because his close quarter combat skill provides a 20% improvement in secondary dispersion rather than the normal 15%. I am getting close, but not quite there yet. Both ships have historical camos. The Tirpitz historical camo improves range and of torpedoes, secondaries and main battery, whereas for the Bismarck it improves the dispersion and the range of the main battery, provides some torpedo protection. Right, how do they do? So my perspective before we go into how they do is I actually prefer the Bismarck. The Tirpitz has those torpedo tubes, and the problem with the torpedo tubes is twofold. One is that the distance marker changes to the maximum range of the torpedoes, which is 5.6 something kilometers. So you can have your cursor out targeting on something, and when it reduces, it stops tracking. So if it's unable, if the If the weapon doesn't have the range to reach the ship, it stops tracking. So what that means is that you have to cycle through the torpedoes to get through between the mains and the secondaries, which means that every now and again you have to readjust your aim. The second thing is accidental fires, or accidental release of torpedoes. Because you're quite busy, what can happen is you accidentally release the torpedoes, and because torpedo travel time is so much slower than the secondary travel time, your targeting is always off. So it can be really annoying when you are trying to save those torpedoes up for the slam. You're running alongside another battleship, and then you accidentally shoot them off into the ether. It can be absolutely devastating. Anyway, so I prefer the Bismarck. Also, I prefer it because I've built it more for range and accuracy at range, which I think is the meta. Both of these ships were much more pleasant to play about a couple of years ago, when before the arrival of a whole lot of very accurate battleships with relatively good long-range dispersion, and the arrival of a whole lot of things that can fire lots and lots of HE because they burn very easily. On the stats, however, let's go for the stats. Which is better, Bismarck versus Tirpitz? The Bismarck my win rate is 50%. I'm not very good at these ships. I don't have the patience for them. But the Tirpitz comes in at 54% win rate, which surprised me, to be perfectly honest. The destruction ratio of the Tirpitz is also higher than the Bismarck. Something else that surprised me, absolutely, at 1.33 versus 1.23 for the Bismarck. Glad both of them are above 1. The average damage per battle for the Tirpitz is better than for the Bismarck, but not by much. 50,668 average damage versus 50,726. Basically, the Tirpitz gets 58 points more damage per battle on average than the Bismarck, so almost the same, less than 1% difference between those average damages. Kills per battle, so this is the likelihood of you killing a ship in a battle, 0.91 on the Tirpitz, 0.74 on the Bismarck. So the Tirpitz comes out a much better killing machine, which surprised me as well. Most valuable player rate, the Tirpitz comes in 11.43% versus 9.57% in the Bismarck, which is a huge improvement for the Tirpitz. The survival rate, however, the Tirpitz survival rate is 31%. Basically, you're 31% of the time you'll get through the battle versus 39% of the time in the Bismarck. So, which is better? Well, basically, on the stats, the Tirpitz is better. And when I compared it against my previous period, however, what I found is that I've had a 3% improvement win rate in the Bismarck and a 5% reduction in the win rate for a 3% improvement in the win rate for the Tirpitz and a 5% reduction in the win rate for the Bismarck. Now, what I do notice is if I don't spend a lot of time on the ship, it does get a lot worse. And let's not talk about the New Orleans, or let's talk about that when it comes to that video. So my overall perspective is the Tirpitz actually comes out on top. It does surprise me, but what I will say in conclusion is that neither ship is really recommended because neither of them really fit the meta. So I'm sorry if that disappoints you. However, yeah, that's the stats. Now, if you are really keen on the ships, do go for them. If you really like a line, you'll learn how to make it work. So don't let me put you off. But yeah, hopefully that provides you with some information for decision making around which of these two ships is the best for you.